Call the Committee of the Whole meeting of February 14th to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Stralchuk,
Here.
Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer, Alderman Hancher,
Here.
Alderman Garrow, Alderman Parrish,
Here.
Alderman Schneider, Alderman Gebhardt, and Mayor Nurbin.
Here. Next up, we have approval of the meeting minutes from January 10th.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Before we get into the next item, there's a little clunkiness with the microphones online for people watching. We have a new push-to-talk system. Hopefully it'll produce crisper, clearer, louder sounds, but we might be cutting in and out because people aren't used to it yet. With that said, we'll jump into the meat of the meeting here with resolutions. Resolution 4013, resolution authorizing expenditures and awarding contracts to the final phase of public improvements projects in the Town Center Tax Increment District 3 for reconfiguration of Mequon Road, the OIT crossing improvements, overhead utility burial, street lighting, streetscaping, signage, land acquisition, and ancillary maintenance in the amount of $5,365,627. Director Tollefson will be giving us an overview.
See.
You have to hold it, yeah. Finger's gonna get tired. Unfortunately, yeah. We'll get used to it.
That's a distraction. Okay, good evening. So I do just want to take a moment because this has been a vision 20 years in the making. It has spanned 5 different mayoral administrations, which also means the makeup of 5 different planning commissions, 5 different councils, and it's been supported by just a lot of different groups and entities. The Rotary Foundation, the Mequon Thiensville Junior Women's Club, a partnership with Thiensville, various consultants that range from, the market and economics to traffic engineers, designers, construction crews, and it's really been quite a success and has had a tremendous impact on the community. It's been financially successful. Evidence of that is that on the redeveloped sites that we have, which is 50 or 11 different redevelopment sites, the property value has increased by 286% in the district. We're going to close on time. The redevelopment has been successful. Those same redevelopment parcels consume about 58 acres of the 100-acre neighborhood, and they're some of the highest value properties in the city of Mequon. And the city's done that in a very conservative approach in terms of the financial aspects of the project. We've been very conservative with our forecasting over the years. We have been able to provide incentives for redevelopment, but do it in a very risk-adverse way for the city. And we were creative about public and private partnerships in order to get public infrastructure accomplished. So everyone in this room and in the past over the last 20 years deserves a lot of credit for that success. Jack took a look at the TID districts in the state of Wisconsin earlier, and I just think this stat is probably a good one to report out for all of us tonight. There's 839 TIF districts in the state of Wisconsin. Based on a value aspect, we are the 17th highest valued TIF in the state of Wisconsin. And out of those approximate 840, there are 367 that are mixed use districts, and we are the 6th highest valued in the state. And I think while it's taken 20 years and there's opportunity for more, there's still 42 acres that we can develop. One of the things we heard as a comment early on was that Mequon didn't want to create or thought that we were going to be creating another Bayshore, and I think the evidence of what's out there today really shows that we've got a great backbone and a good foundation for what is really an authentic neighborhood in the town center. So I am just going to highlight a couple other things for you today. The financial success of the TIF. We will close on time. We reported this out last time when the committee took a look at the public projects to complete. So we will close on time. The TIF will close in 2028. We will close with a positive cash balance. There's no extension planned in terms of the life of that TID, and we have created an enhanced tax base. The increment value is $160 million. That value increase as of January 1, 2022 was a 286% increase. The city will see a tax revenue value on an annual basis as a result of this of about $550,000 a year. All of this assumes that there will be no further development happening in the district, and in fact, we already have an application scheduled for Planning Commission in a couple weeks that includes an addition to the Aurora Medical Center located on Bunch Rock in Mequon. So already there's some additional value that isn't even accounted for here. We expect to see that continue, but again, these numbers are just based on the development that's in the ground today. As I mentioned, 11 sites that have been redeveloped, consuming about 58 acres. So that leaves about 42 acres yet to hopefully see some domino effect of redevelopment happening. A couple of the other redevelopment sort of success stories is that we've converted 30 acres of non-conforming uses into highly utilized, high-valued properties in the neighborhood. And when we look at the city's investment in comparison to private market investment, you can see that we're in that 6% range, which there is no technically an industry standard or a legal standard, but a lot of TIFs go quite a bit higher and contribute more like 20%, 15 to 20%. And as I mentioned, there's been a lot of community investment, the gateway signage, partnership with the village of Thiensville. There's been contributions made by private development in terms of streetscaping. So in May of 21, we did a council workshop. In 2022, we borrowed funds based on those projected public projects, and we contracted with consultants to help us get the work done. That overview of that workshop really was focused on completing the original objectives that were established in the early 2000s, completing any projects that were pending at the time, closing up partial infrastructure investments that were made, looking at city-owned sites, and again, you'll see that, or you've seen that in the package. I mean, really the public projects that we're looking to complete with this last phase of expenditures is occurring on property that the city owns or right of way. There is no other private developer that's going to come in and do these types of improvements at these particular locations. And then 2 points of trying to continue the objective of creating a specific and unique identity by enhancing unique spaces and attracting users and consumers to the area. And at the time of the workshop, we went around and talked to a number of private investors in the neighborhood, and including those who served on various community groups, because they have spent a lot of resources implementing features in the neighborhood too. And so the laundry list that those individuals had suggested worked its way into the workshop and did influence your consensus on those projects getting completed. This is just a streetscape map. This kind of like highlights the point I made earlier and the point that we talked about at the workshop. And it's really to show in green where all of those public infrastructure improvements have been made, because they're associated with redevelopment that occurred in the neighborhood. The red really was our opportunity to suggest that maybe they're not as high of priority locations given the funds that we had left, and that we would take the opportunity that when redevelopment happened on those sites, we would have the developer complete the public infrastructure improvements. The yellow really highlights areas within the neighborhood, as I mentioned earlier, like the cemetery, like the medians, like the right-of-way, the OIT crossing, where those are publicly owned spaces within the neighborhood, and we have the opportunity to kind of bridge the gap then between those green areas to kind of fulfill the public streetscaping and really create a uniform look throughout the neighborhood. Since that workshop, we spent quite a bit of time working with WISDOT. Our vision didn't quite fit their federal technical standards for road design and amenities. So our public works director, Kristen Lundeen, went toe to toe with them and was able to be successful. And I think last year you heard us report out on some of those appeals and our ability to have some success there. We worked with our consultants to design and develop the actual construction plans. Staff worked with We Energies for coordination of utility burial. We came back to Common Council to have some oversight of some design choices. And then in late 2022, we bid out the project. So the timeline here tonight is that we're looking to award the contracts for the actual public improvement projects that you had signaled to us that you'd like to do. Once those contracts are awarded and signed, we will do our part to meet with property owners to talk about the construction that's coming forward. And then we would look to start construction in April with substantial completion by October. The success of the TID allows the city to make expenditures up to about $5.7 million. The public projects that are listed in your package tonight get us to a total of about 5.3. That leaves us with a cash balance at the closure of the TIF in 2028 of about $380,000. That cash payout to the city is $76,000. The city's portion of that cash balance is 20%. The other taxing entities receive the other portions of that cash balance. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our annual tax revenue going forward, again, assuming no other development happens in the district, would be about $550,000 on an annual basis. So here I've laundry listed the contracts that we're looking to award. Contract to Lalonde for the Mequon Road and OIT crossing. There is a state municipal agreement in there that speaks to the preemption with WISDOT, which means the railroad signal has to talk to the traffic signal at Weston Drive. As most of you have discussed with me, that $500,000 is a very conservative estimate that we have from WISDOT. They were only willing to put the most conservative dollar amount in that agreement. We did go back to them and ask them to sharpen their pencil so we have a little bit better understanding of maybe thresholds within that $500,000 range. But that is one of the reasons why we're about $1 million over that than we thought we would be based on the workshop. We Energy's utility burial is about 5.1. That includes all the overhead facilities. It includes some costs that we have with Charter Communications. On those poles, there is a map in the packet that shows where the poles are being removed, how many of them are being removed. There will be some poles that will remain. We opted to suggest to We Energies that those that remain on just very perimeter areas, like at the north end of the Civic Campus parking lot here, that we would like to convert those wood poles to a black pole, so at least it looks a little bit more consistent with the streetscaping. So this dollar amount does include doing new poles in those locations. The cemetery fence, the council preferred a little bit more ornamental fence that was well consistent with town center, a little bit more decorative. That contract would go to Northway. The Bunchak Avenue sidewalk, that was a critical component at the workshop for safety, getting access to Wilson and Stephen School. Pavement markings, this is an opportunity where we're going to enhance all of the crosswalks, including those at Mequon and Cedarburg Road, and redoing all of the markings on Cedarburg Road and markings on Division Street. Over the years, we've talked about the availability of parking in the neighborhood. One of our parking analysis has indicated that the on-street parking on Cedarburg Road has gone well underutilized, and there has been a suggestion that maybe it's not as clear that people can park there. So all of these pavement markings will then be fresh and consistent throughout the entire neighborhood. Dressing up the entries and intersections, so that includes both the Milwaukee River and as you enter the Mequon Cedarburg Road intersection, entering through the Bunch Rock intersection as well, and then taking care of features on Cedarburg Road, including brackets and banners for all of the streetlight fixtures on Cedarburg Road. That is also included in the contract with Lalonde for Mequon Road. Street furniture, that's various furniture scattered throughout the neighborhood, bike racks, trash receptacles, benches, and then some decorative signage. We did allocate dollars in this overall budget for maintenance and administration. Administration includes any additional potential consultant dollars, acquisition of land or easements, and then the other kind of big ticket item is the contingency fund that's close to $500,000. Well, that's a little dark, but this just shows you the final results. Again, a total of about 5.3, closure in 2028, cash flow positive, and then you can see the results, as I previously indicated, a cash payout of about $76,000. So happy to address any questions. My fingertip is numb and white. Happy to answer any questions you have.
You've got 5 fingers per hand, so you just got to switch it up. Yeah. Thank you for the overview. Are there any questions from the committee? Alderman Parrish, Commissioner Parrish.
I forgot to ask you this morning, what were the plans for the bridge again, as far as safety and aesthetics?
Sure. So we plan on enhancing the railing. We were not successful in being able to do any bollards along that edge. We have, and we're waiting for an answer from WISDOT as to what we can do to like the curb edge to that, if we could either provide reflectors or stripe it, in addition to striping the auxiliary lane in that area to provide a little bit more of a visual buffer. That sidewalk is only about 5 feet in width. And we previously discussed the opportunity to put some lighting as a component of that railing.
Alderman Strelczyk.
Oh, okay. That's a good way. Kim, I think you touched on the fact that we had the contingency fund and we had a couple figures in there that were the best numbers that we could get at this time. Basically, what you're looking for is the awardment here and the dollar amount, but the dollar amount that we got there should go down. I got a little reassurance from Will Jones that we were going to still push people to sharpen their pencils and try to save as much money as we can in this process while doing the project right. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on that, just to cover that question that'll come up by the public?
Yeah, in the memo we reported out, and that we will come back to the committee of the whole to report out on the WISDOT estimate. And that doesn't mean that we're going to spend those additional, any savings there, just really means a greater surplus of cash at the closure of the TID. And then we will be diligent about the contingency dollars. We even talked at a staff level of reducing that percentage, and we just didn't think that was, best practice to assume that nothing would come up. So we'll report back out on that contingency expenditure as well. And we don't intend to, utilize any of those dollars for any other line item expenditures.
Thank you.
That was an excellent question, Alderman Strelczyk. I guess the project's a little more expensive than originally envisioned from 2 years ago, but most of that delta is the contingency fund that was never in the original estimate, but probably should have been, just to be. Everyone knows it was going to be a contingency, but it just didn't get listed out. And that and the railroad project, and director's right. If we don't realize any findings during construction, we won't be spending the contingency, and then the coordination with the railroad will likely cost much less than the $500,000 high-end estimate. But it's important that we all understand, if because of the way the TIF financing works, we have to commit to spend the dollars by April 15th, or we can't spend them. So our action tonight is signaling we intend to spend them. If we don't spend them, they'll just go to the balance at the end, and all the taxing entities will just get a larger slice of pie at the end of the project. But if we don't do it now and something comes up later, we'll end up paying for it out of the general fund or not doing it at all. Are there any additional questions or comments? Director Tollefson.
There were two comments that'll be a habit. There were two comments that I heard about signage throughout my discussions over the last several days about the project. There is an interest in making sure that users of the OIT understand that there is alternative ways to cross Mequon Road should the OIT crossing feel or seem intimidating. So we can look at adding that, directing people to Weston Drive so that there's a signalized intersection and a crosswalk there for others. And then when we reported out on some design features, we had showed an alternative street sign look where we would do the logo with obviously the street name, a brown backing with white lettering. At the time, we didn't realize that there was availability of a white background with a black lettering, and I did hear from a particular council member who suggested that they preferred the white with the black. So I guess I would just ask if there's consensus on a preference of coloring.
Correction, it's black background with white lettering. That's the one that I sent you. I'm the mystery council member for the record.
We can take a straw poll on either one of those, or if only one or the other is allowed, if you prefer those over the brown with the white.
Yeah, and I think I was in Ellison Bay in Door County, and Door County's traditionally very conservative with their signage. They're very conservative with their design rules and things like that. And it was black background with white lettering, which ties in with all of the black and white, the natural steel, and it felt like a really good match. So I immediately sent it over to Kim, and I'm glad we're discussing it tonight. So thank you for bringing that up.
I guess there's no time like the present to get informal feedback. As I'm trying to recall our conversations from the design meeting from late 2022, maybe one of the comments was the brown felt a little bit like the signage in Brown Deer. So maybe that's not a bad idea to set ourselves apart a little bit, but I won't make a decision in isolation. We don't have pictures.
I'm wondering
do we?
if we can't get visuals before we make that decision, because we saw visuals of the other options, and I'd like to see a visual before we make the decision. I don't think we need to make the decision tonight.
So maybe in a month we can have a couple samples and we can have a straw vote and just get some input on that. No one will be buying signs a month from now. It's a bunch of paperwork and contracts to get rolling, but the signs, I'm sure they have a little bit of schedule leeway in.
Yes, we can provide some imagery for that and a quick decision.
That sounds like a plan. Okay, back to Alderman Strelchak.
Yeah, and then just after doing a little bit of research on the brown signs, that was for like a feature, like a park or something like that. I looked at like kind of the DOT and what that designation for the brown and white was. We could use it for the streets, but it's traditionally been used, and I believe in the state of Wisconsin to outline like that there's a park ahead, that there's some kind of a community interest. Although town center is a community interest, it's a different type of community interest, and them being street signs, I kind of questioned that decision that we'd made earlier. So.
All right, thank you. Any other feedback from the committee? See a bunch of happy campers. That's good. Do we need any specific action, just a recommendation to move this on to council? So any other comments? If not, there could be a motion.
I move to move this on to council for approval.
So a motion and a second. Any more comments or questions? Hearing none, all is in favor. Well, should we call the roll? Why don't we call the roll just to make it super official?
Alderman Stralchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell, Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
8 ayes and no noes. That item moves on to council. Next up, we have a brief item on future policy items for discussion, consideration, or analysis. Are there anything anyone would like to bring forward at this time? If not, we can always add it anytime throughout the month and try and get it on a future agenda. Seeing or hearing none, move on to is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Heard a motion and a second over there from
Second.
District 6 and 7. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We're adjourned.